For 1,000 years, Earth had been at peace. It was not the fragile kind of peace that came from fear or shaky treaties. No, this was something different, something greater. Humanity had grown beyond its old scars. Nations no longer fought for land. Hunger and poverty were memories. The great wars that once defined human history had been buried under a millennium of progress. Children learned about them in school the way they might learn about ancient beasts. Distant, unreal, almost mythical. War was history. Violence was primitive. Humanity had evolved. From the heart of Earth, the species had stretched outward. Colonies bloomed on Mars, thriving beneath glass domes and beneath the surface. Great orbital cities wrapped like shining rings around Jupiter, their lights glittering like jewels against the black of space. Human footprints marked moons and planets, once thought unreachable. Trade ships crossed the void as casually as ships once sailed oceans. To live in this age was to live in certainty, safety, prosperity. People laughed at the idea of invasion, laughed at the thought of armies and conquest. Humanity had no enemies. The stars were empty, waiting to be filled with life. That was what everyone believed, until the day the sky broke. It began at the edge of the solar system. Silent sensors orbiting Neptune detected a disturbance, space rippling unnaturally, like water disturbed by a stone. Then came the shadows. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of colossal ships emerged, tearing through the void with unnatural speed. They did not glide like human vessels, designed with balance and grace. These ships looked alive, jagged and brutal, their hulls bristling with strange black spines that pulsed with red light, as if they were veins filled with molten fire. They were predators, and the system was their hunting ground. The first telescopic images spread like wildfire through the colonies. People stopped what they were doing. Workers froze in orbital docks staring at holoscreens. Farmers on Mars abandoned their fields to listen. In the great cities of Earth, billions watched the feeds in silence. The truth was undeniable. Humanity was not alone. Then the message came. Every frequency, every channel, every network across every planet and station flickered, hijacked by a signal that burned through firewalls as if they were paper. Screens went black, then filled with a single image. A towering figure cloaked in armor that looked more like bone than metal. Its eyes glowed with a cruel burning yellow. The voice that followed was deep, guttural, filled with contempt. Humans, your age of false peace ends today. You will kneel before the empire of Cathar, or you will be broken. Your worlds, your children, your future, all will belong to us. The voice vanished. The screens went dark, and the silence that followed was worse than the words themselves. For a moment it seemed as if the entire species had forgotten how to breathe. Cities stood still. On Mars, in the domes, people clutched their children and whispered in fear. In the orbital rings above Jupiter, workers stared out the glass at the far-off shadows of the fleet approaching. On Earth, in the great capital cities, the message replayed in people's minds again and again: kneel or be broken. Fear spread like a cold wave. But then, something changed. In the quiet after the broadcast, in the stillness of that first terrible moment, a strange reaction emerged. Not screaming, not despair, not collapsed smiles. At first it was small. A single technician in a control center laughed under his breath. A soldier on Earth let out a low chuckle. A mother on Mars shook her head and grinned, though tears filled her eyes. And then it spread across Earth and its colonies. Humans began to laugh. Not because the threat wasn't real, not because they were foolish, but because after 1,000 years something had returned. Something old, something buried deep in their blood and their history. For too long, humanity had lived without challenge, without fire. They had been explorers, builders, dreamers. But now, faced with an empire demanding their submission, they remembered what they truly were: survivors, warriors, creatures who had faced extinction again and again, and each time emerged stronger. The people smiled because they knew the aliens had made a mistake. They thought peace had made humanity weak. That comfort had made them soft. That the long centuries had erased the old instincts of war, but war was not forgotten. It was not erased. It had only been waiting, sleeping. And now, as the alien fleet bore down upon the solar system, humanity's silence was not the silence of fear. It was the silence before laughter, the silence before awakening. The alien message had said, "Prepare to kneel." But the truth was simple. Humanity would never kneel. and the universe was about to remember why. The alien fleet did not stop at Neptune. They advanced slowly, methodically, their jagged silhouettes cutting across the void. Each ship was a dagger pointed at Earth's heart. Sensors tracked them. Stations whispered warnings, but no defense was raised. Not yet. Humanity waited. The aliens believed this hesitation was weakness. In their eyes, humanity had grown fat and soft in their 1,000 years of peace. A prey species pampered by safety, blind to the reality of conquest. To the Empire of Cathar, it was almost laughable. The humans had cities in space, yes, but they had not fought a war in over a millennium. Surely they had no teeth left. They were wrong. Because even though war had left humanity's present, it had never truly left their blood. The legends were still there. Across Earth's continents, monuments still stood to the battles of old. Vast memorials, silent museums filled with steel and stories. In schools, children still studied generals and strategies the way they studied great artists and philosophers. They memorized names, Thermopylae, Waterloo, Stalingrad, Midway, as if they were carved into their DNA. War had not been erased. It had been remembered, honored, contained. And though humanity had sworn never to fight among themselves again, they had never forgotten how, on Mars, beneath its red soil, entire academies trained soldiers in secret, not in preparation for fighting their fellow humans, but for something greater. Insurance, they called it. A generation raised not for war, but for readiness. In zero-gravity halls, cadets practiced maneuvers older than memory, updated with technology no alien had ever seen. On Earth, vast libraries contained simulations of every war ever fought. Artificial intelligences ran endless scenarios, learning, adapting, preparing for an enemy that had never come. Until now, even the games told the truth. Children on the orbital rings played with war the way their ancestors once played chess. Fleet simulators, battle strategy competitions, holographic duels fought with impossible precision. These were pastimes for them. But the games were not just games. They were lessons, unconsciously teaching tactics that had been refined for centuries. The Cathar did not know it, but they were walking into a trap laid not by deceit, but by time itself. 1,000 years of peace had not made humanity weaker. It had made them efficient, and there was something else the aliens did not understand. Humor. When the Cathar commander broadcast his demand to kneel, he expected trembling, begging, a desperate plea for mercy. What he saw instead was a smile. Not the smile of madness or arrogance, but of recognition. It was the smile of a predator, finally seeing another predator. The first response from humanity did not come from a general or politician. It came from an ambassador, a woman named Elira Voss, who stood in the United Earth Council chamber when the alien signal was forced onto the screens. The chamber was filled with silence when she rose. Her colleagues stared in disbelief as she connected to the open channel. The alien's snarling visage returned. Its yellow eyes burned. "You are given one chance. Kneel and you may live." Elira tilted her head. A faint smile touched her lips. And she answered in a calm, steady voice, "We have not fought a war in 1,000 years." The alien commander leaned forward, satisfied. To him, this was a confession of weakness. He prepared to declare victory. But then Elira's eyes narrowed and her smile grew. "If you wish to remind us how," she said softly, "we'd love a demonstration." The chamber erupted, not in fear but in laughter. The delegates of Earth, the governors of Mars, the representatives of the colonies, they laughed long and loud, their voices echoing through the chamber. Even across the feeds, billions of humans joined them. The alien commander froze, confused. He expected panic. He found defiance wrapped in amusement. His scowl deepened, but for the first time a flicker of doubt touched his eyes. The humans were not afraid. Across the solar system, the laughter spread. Pilots in the orbital fleets laughed as they strapped into their stations. Engineers laughed as they uncovered old weapons locked in vaults deep beneath the ice of Europa. Scientists laughed as they checked the codes to activate systems no outsider had ever seen. It was not foolishness. It was a memory stirring. The laughter was not denial. It was promise. The Cathar had come to break a species they thought had forgotten war. Instead, they had awakened a giant that had been resting, not sleeping. For every story of peace, there was a story of battle. For every cathedral of learning, There was a fortress hidden in plain sight. Humanity had not abandoned the tools of war. They had hidden them, buried them under the weight of progress, waiting for the day they might be needed. And that day had come. On Mars, command centers lit up with codes untouched for centuries. The Cathar Empire was not known for patience. In their long history of conquest, no species had ever resisted the first demand. The weak always surrendered. The strong always fell quickly. But humanity was different. Instead of submission, the Empire received laughter. The first official meeting was arranged as soon as the alien fleet crossed Neptune's orbit. A secure channel was opened between the lead Cathar dreadnought and the United Earth Council. Billions watched the feed, their eyes fixed on the figure that appeared before them. The alien commander stood like a living mountain, encased in armor that shimmered with shifting red light. Its head was ridged with bone-like protrusions, its mouth lined with fangs. The voice that rumbled from its chest shook the chamber's speakers. "You were given a chance," it growled. "A chance to kneel, to live under the banner of the Empire. You waste it with arrogance. Your kind will be erased." Silence filled the human chamber. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then Ambassador Elira Voss stepped forward once again. Her face was calm, her eyes sharp. She looked at the alien commander, not with fear, but with the faintest hint of amusement. The silence stretched until it felt like the entire solar system was holding its breath. Then she spoke. "You are mistaken." The alien's eyes narrowed. "Mistaken?" "Yes," Elira said, her voice steady. "You believe our peace has made us weak. You believe 1,000 years has dulled us. But you do not understand us. You see laughter and think it is arrogance. It is not, it is recognition," the alien snarled. "Recognition of what?" Elira leaned forward. "Recognition of a story we have lived too many times before. You are not the first to come here demanding we kneel. You will not be the last, but you will learn the same lesson they did." The alien bared its teeth. "And what lesson is that?" Her smile widened, and her voice rang out across the chamber. "That humanity does not kneel," the room erupted with laughter. "Not mocking, but united, strong, confident." The sound carried across the feed to every colony, every station, every home. Billions of humans laughed together, and the sound echoed across the stars. The alien commander froze. His fangs clenched, his eyes glowed brighter, but he could not hide the flicker of uncertainty that passed through him. In all his centuries of conquest, no prey had ever laughed at him. It was then that the Cathar began to understand that humanity was not what they thought, but it was already too late. Far above Jupiter, deep within an orbital ring, human pilots received the signal they had waited for. They powered their ships, sleek vessels designed not for ceremony but for war. Their weapons came online with a low hum that resonated through the metal decks. "Do we have clearance?" one pilot asked. The commander's voice came through, calm and steady. "Not yet. Let them make the first move. Let them believe we are unarmed." The pilots chuckled, their voices low but filled with anticipation. The laughter carried through the comms, and though the enemy could not hear it, the sound filled the humans with something ancient, excitement. For the first time in 1,000 years, they would fight. On Mars, deep in the underground academies, cadets and soldiers gathered before massive screens. They had trained their whole lives for this moment, though few believed it would ever come. Now as the alien fleet moved closer, they felt the weight of history pressing upon them. An old general, his uniform marked with centuries of tradition, stood before them. His voice echoed through the hall. "Do not think of this as the first war in 1,000 years, he told them. "Think of it as the continuation of every war that came before. Our ancestors bled for survival. Now we stand in their place. We will not let the chain break." The soldiers raised their fists. The hall shook with a single word, shouted in unison, "Humanity!" And even here, beneath Mars's red soil, laughter followed. The alien commander, growing impatient, finally issued his order. "Advance!" he snarled. "Destroy their outposts. Burn their satellites. Let them see what it means to defy us." The first wave of Cathar warships surged forward, their engines blazing with crimson fire. They struck at human listening posts orbiting the outer planets, expecting them to fall like dry leaves in a storm. But when their weapons fired, they found something they had not expected. The stations did not crumble. Shields flared to life, brilliant and strong. Old weapons hidden for centuries roared back into the void. Laser batteries that had slept for generations unleashed storms of light. Kinetic cannons, massive enough to punch holes through mountains, spat fire into the black. Several alien ships shattered instantly, torn apart by weapons they had never seen. The laughter of human crews filled the comms. "First blood," a captain said, his voice calm, almost amused. The aliens had expected silence, fear and begging. What they received was the echo of human laughter carried across the stars. For the Cathar, this was the beginning of war. For humanity, it was something else entirely. It was a reminder. The reminder that they had never forgotten, that the old instincts were not gone. That peace had not made them weak. As the alien fleet burned in the outer system, humanity's voice rose as one. They laughed, not because they underestimated the threat, but because they knew the truth. The Cathar thought they had come to conquer prey, but all they had done was awaken predators. The Cathar thought they had bloodied humanity. In truth, all they had done was pull the mask from Earth's face. When their first attack struck the outer system, when their ships were torn apart by defenses they didn't know existed, the alien commander sneered. He believed these were scraps, relics, the last desperate weapons of a doomed species, but he was wrong, because those listening posts and defense grids were not relics. They were warnings, decoys, the smallest fraction of what humanity had prepared. Deep under the oceans of Europa, machines older than nations stirred awake. Their hulls were covered in frost and ice, hidden beneath kilometers of frozen crust. For centuries they had been forgotten by all but a handful of keepers, sworn to silence. Now, as coded signals raced across the system, the ice cracked. The machines rose. Warships, not ceremonial vessels, not transports disguised with weapons. These were leviathans, sleek, black-hulled, bristling with cannons that hummed with power. They broke the surface of Europa's seas like ancient gods rising from myth, water cascading from their armored sides. Across the system, similar awakenings began. On Mars, beneath the sands of the Valles Marineris, vast bunkers opened for the first time in 1,000 years. Inside lay fleets entombed in silence, carriers, battleships, destroyers, hundreds of them. They rose into the thin Martian sky, engines blazing, lifting as one into orbit. Colonists looked upward, shielding their eyes as shadows covered the red plains. On Earth's moon, entire cities had been built above hidden hangars. Doors the size of continents cracked open, releasing swarms of fighters. Their silver wings glittered against the black as they formed in precise formations, every movement a declaration of readiness. The Cathar watched from afar, and for the first time their confidence faltered. This was not the response of a prey species. This was not the desperation of the weak. This was organization, discipline, preparation. This was war. In the command chambers of the United Earth Defense Network, holograms filled the air. Thousands of ships, old and new, came online, their status lights burning green one by one. General Amonkal, commander of the Solar Defense, stood with hands clasped behind his back. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of centuries. For 1,000 years we promised ourselves we would never fight each other again, he said. That promise was kept. But we also promised something else, that if anything ever came for us, anything that threatened the chain of our species, we would be ready. He turned to his officers. Their faces were young, but their eyes were sharp, reflecting the green glow of the holograms. Now, Kal said, is the time we kept the second promise. No cheers followed. No shouts, just silent nods, calm smiles. Humanity did not need noise to prove their resolve. The alien commander, watching through distant sensors, snarled in disbelief. Impossible, he hissed. They are primitives. They have not fought for 1,000 years. His officers shifted uneasily. One finally spoke. Commander, these are not primitives. They are predators in disguise. The commander bared his fangs. Then let them come. We will crush them. But the words sounded hollow even to him. The first real human fleet to meet the aliens emerged from Mars orbit. Hundreds of ships glided together, every movement in perfect formation. At the heart of the fleet was a vessel larger than any the Cathar had ever seen, a mobile fortress, bristling with rail cannons the size of skyscrapers. The alien scouts transmitted images back to their commander. The sight was enough to silence even his arrogance. Human ships did not look like the clumsy craft of prey. They were sleek, angular, purposeful. Every line, every curve spoke of efficiency and lethality. And when they moved not like individuals, but like a single organism. The Cathar Empire had fought many enemies across the stars, but none had ever moved like this. In the cockpit of a human fighter, a pilot named Kalen adjusted his controls. His ship hummed around him, alive with energy. Through his visor he could see the alien fleet on the edge of the system. "They really think we're soft," he muttered with a grin. His wingmate laughed over the comms. "Let's show them what soft looks like." The alien commander of the Cathar Empire leaned forward on his throne of bone and steel. Before him the holoscreens glowed with the sight of humanity's fleets forming near Mars. His lips curled into a snarl. "Primitive tricks," he spat. "Old weapons hidden in caves. They believe this will frighten us. Send the war hosts. Show them what true power looks like." The order was given. The Cathar fleet, vast and terrible, surged forward. Thousands of jagged ships spread across the void, their spines glowing with crimson fire. Their war drums, low pulses of energy that rattled the comms, echoed through the dark. It was intimidation, ritual, the sound of conquest, but humanity did not tremble. Instead, they laughed. The first clash came near the orbit of Mars. Human fleets glided into position, shields humming, weapons locked. At the front were carriers and destroyers, their hulls shining with the faint glow of advanced plating. Behind them, massive fortress ships loomed like gods of war. General Kal stood at the command deck of the flagship Eternal Resolve. His voice cut through the comms like steel. "Hold formation. Let them come." Across the channels, pilots chuckled. Officers smiled. The tension that might have broken another species was, for humanity, a spark of joy. They were about to show the galaxy what it had forgotten. The alien warships opened fire. Streams of molten plasma lit up the black, streaking toward the human lines. Explosions bloomed as the first shot struck, except they did not tear ships apart. Instead, shields flared. Vast walls of light shimmered and absorbed the blasts. Human vessels held their ground, unmoving, as if the weapons of the Empire were no more dangerous than a summer storm. The alien commander roared, "Increase fire! Burn them!" A hurricane of plasma filled space, but the human shields held. Then, in perfect unison, the human fleet answered. The first salvo came from Mars itself. Rail cannons the size of mountains fired from hidden platforms buried in the canyons. Slugs of tungsten, accelerated to fractions of light speed, screamed into the void. The Cathar never saw them coming. One alien dreadnought shattered instantly, torn into fragments by a single strike. Another's shields collapsed before a follow-up barrage ripped it apart. Then the fleet unleashed its fury. Human ships opened fire with railguns, lasers and missile storms, their weapons lighting the void like 1,000 suns. They fired not wildly, not desperately, but with precision. Every shot had purpose. Every volley struck where it mattered most. Alien ships designed for brute force and terror fell apart under the storm. Their spines cracked, their hulls ruptured. Their fleets broke formation in shock. And through it all, human pilots laughed. "Target down," Kalen, the fighter pilot, said over comms as his missiles tore through an enemy frigate. His wingmate laughed. "Careful, Kalen, you're making them look slow." The laughter spread across the channels. It was calm, steady, unshaken. To the Cathar listening in, it was horrifying. Their enemies were not screaming. They were enjoying themselves. The alien commander slammed his claws against his throne. "Close the distance. Board them. Tear them apart with blades if we must." His ship surged forward, desperate to turn the tide. Massive cruisers, bristling with spikes, charged straight into the human line. But humanity was ready. As the aliens closed in, human formations shifted with surgical precision. Fleets moved like dancers in perfect rhythm, opening corridors, drawing the enemy in. Then the traps sprang shut. Fighter swarms poured from hidden bays, cutting into the exposed flanks of the alien cruisers. Battleships turned as one, their railguns firing point-blank into enemy hulls. Entire Cathar formations vanished in seconds. The commander's yellow eyes widened as his ships were torn apart, not by chaos, but by discipline. This was not the fighting style of prey. This was mastery. And still the laughter echoed. On Earth, billions watched the battle unfold on vast skyscreens. Every time a Cathar ship exploded in fire, crowds erupted in cheers. Children pointed to the glowing fleets with wide eyes. Old veterans of long-forgotten skirmishes wiped tears from their faces, whispering, "They remember. We still remember." For the first time in 1,000 years, humanity had raised its sword. And for the first time in galactic history, the Cathar were bleeding. Hours passed. The black of space burned with wreckage. Alien ships, once unstoppable, drifted lifeless, their hulks glowing red as they cracked apart. The human fleet remained. Scarred, battered, but still smiling, General Kal's voice cut across the channel. "Sun status. All fleets operational," his officers reported. "Losses minimal," Kal nodded. His eyes moved to the enemy flagship, still lurking at the edge of battle. He raised a single hand. "Advance," the fleet obeyed. Thousands of human ships turned in unison, engines flaring. They moved not like prey pretending to be strong, but like predators who had remembered their nature. The alien commander stared at the advancing wall of steel and fire. His claws trembled. His voice faltered. This cannot be." But it was. When the last shots faded and silence returned, the truth was undeniable. The Cathar had come expecting an easy conquest. Instead, they had been shattered in a single battle. Their fleets lay broken across the void. Their empire's pride burned away. And the humans? They stood unbowed, their laughter still echoing across the stars. The galaxy would remember this day, the day humanity fought its first war in 1,000 years. And won in hours. The battlefield was quiet. What had begun as a storm of fire and fury now drifted in silence. The wreckage of the Cathar fleet floated in the void like broken bones, glowing faintly in the reflected light of Mars. Hulls cracked. Engines burned. Thousands of alien corpses turned slowly in the black, their armor still glowing with dying embers. The humans had not chased every survivor. They could have. Their fleets could have swept through, annihilating the last of the enemy with a single order. But they didn't. Instead, they waited. On the command deck of the Eternal Resolve, General Kal stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes were fixed on the image of the remaining Cathar flagship, still lurking at the edge of the battle zone. The massive vessel had not advanced, had not fired, had not fled. It simply floated there, silent, as if stunned into stillness. The alien commander's face appeared on the holoscreen once more. His yellow eyes, once burning with arrogance, now flickered with disbelief. His voice, once thunder, trembled with something new. "You," he said, his words slow, heavy. "This is impossible. You were not meant to resist. You were not meant to fight." Kal's lips curled into the faintest smile. His voice was calm, steady, almost kind. "And yet here we stand." The alien's claws scraped the arms of his throne. "We are the Empire of Cathar. We have crushed worlds. We have enslaved species older than yours. You cannot—" Kal interrupted him, his voice cutting through like a blade. "You threatened our children. You threatened our home, and you expected us to kneel. That is where you made your mistake." Across the solar system, humanity listened. The transmission was broadcast live to every colony, every station, every ship. Billions of humans stood in silence, watching their general speak not only to the enemy, but to history itself. Kal stepped closer to the holoscreen. His eyes never left the alien commanders. "We do not want war. For 1,000 years, we kept our weapons silent. We buried our fleets. We promised ourselves we would build, not destroy. But make no mistake," his voice deepened, heavy with iron, "we have never forgotten how to fight. And if you bring war to us, we will end it, quickly." The chamber behind him was silent, the officers frozen in their places. The weight of his words filled the air. Kal raised his chin and his voice rang across the stars. "Go back to your empire. Carry this message to your masters. Tell them humanity does not kneel. Tell them we do not break. Tell them that if they come again—" He let the silence hang for a long, terrible moment before finishing. "They will not return." For a long time, the alien commander said nothing. His claws trembled. His eyes burned with fury, with shame, with fear. Finally, he hissed a single word: "Retreat." The order echoed through what remained of the Cathar fleet. The surviving ships turned, engines flaring, dragging their broken pride back into the darkness of space. Humanity did not chase them. The fleets held their lines. watching, waiting, smiling as the once proud invaders fled like beaten predators. The humans could have destroyed them to the last ship. But they didn't need to. The message had already been delivered. On Earth, in the vast capital squares, billions erupted into cheers. The sound shook the cities, a tidal wave of joy and pride. On Mars, in the red domes, colonists wept and embraced, their voices rising in chants of unity. In the orbital rings, workers abandoned their stations to laugh and sing together, their voices echoing through the halls. But in the command centers, in the hearts of those who had fought, the mood was quieter. Not celebration, reflection. Humanity had won, yes. But in doing so, they had revealed something to the galaxy. Their strength, their readiness, their hidden arsenal. The question now was not whether they could survive, but what the galaxy would do with that knowledge. General Karl stood at the viewport of the Eternal Resolve, his gaze fixed on the distant stars where the enemy had vanished. Ambassador Elira Voss joined him, her hands folded neatly behind her back. "You could have destroyed them all," she said quietly. Karl nodded. "Yes, why didn't you?" In the weeks that followed, the wreckage of the Cathar fleet was cleared from orbit. Salvage ships moved silently through the void, dragging shattered hulks into collection zones. On Earth and across the colonies, life returned to normal, or as normal as it could, after a war that had ended almost before it began. But the galaxy was not silent. The survivors of the Cathar carried their shame like a wound. They had expected to return with Earth in chains, with human cities burning, with prisoners lined up for their master's review. Instead, they limped back with empty fleets and haunted eyes. The story spread quickly, first as whispers in the shadows of alien markets, then as rumors among smugglers and wanderers, then as confirmed reports from terrified merchants who had seen the burning wreckage with their own eyes. The tale was always the same. The humans did not fear. The humans did not kneel. The humans laughed as they destroyed us. On Earth, children in the academies began their studies with new lessons, not just of science and peace, but of vigilance. For 1,000 years, war had been a shadow, a forgotten relic. Now it was memory once more, sharp, alive, and ready. Veterans who had fought in the first Battle of Mars were honored as heroes. But when asked about the fight, they rarely spoke of glory or blood. Instead, they spoke of the silence before the first shot, the calm in their hearts, the strange, unshakable joy that had carried them through the storm. They called it the laughter of Earth. In the halls of alien empires, the laughter became something else, a symbol, a warning. Where once diplomats spoke of humans as naive builders and dreamers, now their voices trembled. Where once warlords dismissed Earth as soft, they now hesitated. The name human carried a new weight, not the weight of fear alone, but of caution, of respect. The galaxy understood. If provoked, humanity would rise. And when they rose, they would not rise as prey, but as predators who had chosen peace and remembered war. General Amon Kal became a figure whispered of even outside human space. His face, calm and unshaken in the holoscreens, became an image replayed in countless alien broadcasts. The words he had spoken, "Tell them humanity does not kneel," were etched into history. But when asked about his victory, Kal dismissed the praise. "It was not me," he said, standing before the Council of Earth. "It was all of us. Humanity does not kneel because humanity does not stand alone." And across the stars, billions believed it. Ambassador Elira Voss carried humanity's new reputation into the diplomatic halls of the galaxy. She found doors opening where once they had been closed. She found ancient empires lowering their tone when they spoke of Earth. She found alliances being offered, out of respect and out of fear. Yet she also found something deeper. She saw other species, long oppressed by the Cathar and others like them, looking to humanity with hope. If the laughing humans could stand against the greatest war machine in the sector, then perhaps they too could rise. Perhaps the galaxy did not have to kneel anymore, and so humanity's legacy began to spread, not just through fire but through inspiration. The first battle had been a warning. The silence that followed was a promise. On the 100th day after the battle, a memorial was unveiled on Earth. It was a simple monument built in the great plaza of New Geneva. At its center stood a sculpture, a single human figure standing tall, head tilted back in laughter. No weapon, no armor, just the laughter. Beneath it were carved words that would echo through generations. We are humanity. We do not kneel, crowds gathered. Songs were sung. Children carried flags. Veterans stood shoulder to shoulder, silent but proud. The moment was not just a remembrance of victory, but a reminder of who they were, and who they would always be. Far across the galaxy, in dark halls where alien warlords planned their campaigns, the laughter still haunted them. They dreamed of the calm faces of human pilots. They shuddered at the sound of voices laughing as their fleets burned, and they hesitated. For the first time in centuries, the great empires of the galaxy paused before launching their wars. They paused because the image of Earth lingered in their minds, because they knew if they forced the humans to rise again, the galaxy itself might shake. And so, after 1,000 years of peace broken by fire, humanity found itself in a new age. Not the peace of silence, not the peace of weakness, but the peace of strength remembered. The laughter of Earth had become more than a sound. It had become a legend, and legends do not die. The galaxy did not sleep. Even as the Cathar licked their wounds and their enemies whispered of the humans, new currents began to stir in the void. Empires that had once stood unchallenged now paused. Ancient species, long enslaved or forgotten, raised their heads. The galaxy was shifting, pulled by a new center of gravity, and that center was Earth. In the dark council chambers of the Cathar Empire, rage boiled. The High Lords sat upon their jagged thrones, cloaked in shadows, their claws clicking against stone. Reports from the first battle of Mars were displayed in flickering hollows, images of shattered dreadnoughts, crushed fleets, and the smiling faces of human warriors. "This cannot stand," one lord hissed. "Our fleets are feared across 100 systems. If word spreads unchecked, others will rise against us." "It already spreads," another answered, her eyes narrowed. "Merchants whisper it. Slaves sing it. Even our own soldiers fear it." The chamber fell into silence. For the first time in generations, the Cathar were faced with something they had never considered: doubt. Far from their empire, in hidden corners of the galaxy, the oppressed listened to these same whispers with hope. On the jungle world of Sithra, where the insectoid Thren had been chained for centuries, workers gathered in secret under the twin moons. They passed around smuggled recordings of the battle, the humans holding the line, laughing in the face of fire. "If they can do it," one Thren elder said, her mandibles trembling with excitement, "then so can we." On the frozen mines of Vorin, prisoners carved the words into the ice walls, "We do not kneel." On the drifting city ship of the Maracai, children played a new game. They pretended to be humans, laughing as they charged invisible enemies, shouting in joy as they won every battle. The laughter spread not as fear, but as freedom. Humanity itself remained strangely quiet. The Council of Earth convened in secret chambers. Generals, scientists, and ambassadors debated long into the night. Do we reveal our strength? Some argued. Do we build an alliance, strike before the Cathar recover, and end the threat forever? Or, the others countered, do we retreat back into peace? We fought because we were forced. Let us not become the conquerors we once feared to be. The debate raged, but no decision was made. Humanity stood at a crossroads. General Kahl remained silent through much of it, his gaze steady, his voice quiet. When he finally spoke, the chamber hushed. "War is not who we are, but it is part of us. If the galaxy comes to us in chains, we will break them. If it comes in peace, we will build with it. The choice will not be ours to make. The choice will be theirs." His words carried weight. But beyond the council halls, the galaxy was already moving. Weeks later, humanity received its first visitors, not conquerors, not invaders, refugees. A fleet of battered ships arrived at the edge of human space, their hulls cracked, their engines dying. They carried the Thren, the insectoid species once enslaved by the Cathar. Their leader, a frail elder with wings torn and scarred, bowed deeply before the human ambassadors. "We heard your laughter," she said, her voice breaking. "We heard your defiance. We have come not for conquest, but for hope. Will you help us?" The request shook Earth. For the first time in 1,000 years, another species had come not to dominate them, but to seek their strength, and humanity had to decide. Would they become the shield of the galaxy or stand alone once more? Across the stars, the echoes grew louder. The Cathar Empire plotted revenge, reforging its fleets. The enslaved dreamed of freedom. The warlords hesitated, weighing risk against ambition. And in the shadows of the void, ancient powers, silent for millennia, turned their gaze toward Earth. The galaxy had thought humanity forgotten. The galaxy had thought humanity tame. Now they remembered, and the next chapter was only beginning.